Hello, and thank you so much for stopping by. This is Cheryl, and I'm going to show you how I created this colorful rainbow alcohol ink background. Now, when I started this project, I was going to do it completely with markers, and in a minute you'll see why that didn't work. So I took a bunch of different rainbow colors. I took all my primaries, my secondaries, and then one in between because I wanted to have transitions between the primaries and secondaries. And I scribbled a little bit of each marker with my chisel end onto some Nara Yupo paper. So you can see that I'm doing this in rainbow order. I have this idea for an art project that I want to frame and put on my wall in my art room. And I just thought creating a beautiful rainbow background would be really, really nice. I have a stencil that I've had for years that I have never actually used, and wanted to create a beautiful background for it. So the markers that I am using here are Copic markers, which are an alcohol-based marker. There are a bunch of different alcohol-based markers. Any one of them would work to do what I am doing here, but I do change it up as the video goes along because I ended up not getting quite the look that I was envisioning in my head. If you want a really, really nice pale and flowy look, this is perfect for that. In my head, I had an idea of something that was quite a bit brighter than what ended up happening. So in that little squeeze bottle there, I have some isopropyl alcohol. So I'm squeezing a little bit onto my surface, and then I'm using my alcohol ink blower to blow that ink around and just kind of create a rainbowy color background for the project that I'm making. So I'm using my blower to blow both away from me as well as towards me. Depending on the look that you're wanting, you could just blow it one way. I wanted it to kind of go from the center and move outwards. So I'm using an alcohol ink blower here. It's perfect for someone who's beginning with alcohol inks, just because it's a nice inexpensive tool and you get a nice look with it. I also have an air compressor that I bought years ago for use with airbrushing with my Copics that I really like using because the air pressure is a lot stronger. You could also use the bottles of air that you use to clean electronics or like your computer keyboard. That would work as well, and that is quite strong. So if you have problems squeezing for a prolonged period or repeatedly, this may be a hard tool for you to use just because you do have to keep squeezing it. But it is nice for a beginner just because it is nice and inexpensive. Another thing you can use, I also have a Conair, which is a hair tool. It's got dual speed, so I can use it on high speed or low speed, and it also has low heat, which is perfect for this as well. I just chose to use something that was very simple that beginners could see and is a nice economical tool for this particular project. Any one of those tools would absolutely work with this. But you can see as I'm blowing the ink out that I'm getting a really, really soft and pale look. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I really, really like it. I think it's pretty, but it's just not what I had envisioned for the final project of what I'm doing. So I'm realizing from this that I need to use something different other than my alcohol ink markers. The color isn't as deep and as vibrant, and I need to use alcohol inks just to get a deeper color. I did take this technique and I created a beautiful ballerina card that I will link at the end of this video. And it's perfect for this because it works well with the nice, soft, flowy look to it. And even at that, this would be beautiful on its own, just not what I was envisioning. So once I have all of my alcohol ink blown out, or the isopropyl alcohol to blow out the different colors, I'm going to let this dry completely before I move on. You don't necessarily have to wait until it's dried completely before you can move on if you know exactly what you're doing. But I was just in the process of thinking of how to deepen the colors. And in the end, I grab some alcohol ink colors that are very similar to the ones that I used. So I'm taking these alcohol ink colors, putting a little bit in the center down that line where I put the marker. And I'm going to put all of my colors down and let them dry a little bit before moving on and blowing out my colors in exactly the same way as before. And I'm going to still use the alcohol ink blower tool. I do like it for this particular application, but I did notice, because I end up doing a lot, that towards the end my hand was getting a little bit sore. So I would tend to keep it for smaller projects, card size projects or whatnot, depending on how much you're wanting to do, or just wait a little period between your layers. So I end up doing this process 3 times to get a nice, deep, beautiful color that I'm looking for before going on and adding my image. I'll be quiet now and let you just watch the process. I am going to speed it up just for time, but I'll just let you watch. All right, my inks are done and I've let them completely dry and I'm really loving the vibrancy. So this is the stencil that I am going to use. I absolutely love it and I think it works perfectly for this bright background. I've actually had it for many years and just haven't used it. It's a Donna Downey stencil. If I can find it that it's available, I'll put it in a link below. Otherwise, I'll just have it linked or listed in the supplies. So to keep it nice and simple here, I'm just using some white texture paste. It's going to be a nice matte white, and I want it to be risen or raised from the background, which is why I'm using texture paste. If you don't want it raised, you could also use a stencil brush and just white acrylic paint. The alcohol ink doesn't react with the texture paste, so I'm not going to get some colored texture paste in the end. If my inks were a dye-based ink, they would start to seep into the color of the texture paste, but alcohol ink doesn't do that, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm trying to be careful and just going over each of the areas once. I don't want to work it too much and end up having my texture paste seep underneath my stencil, so I am trying to be a little bit careful. I do get one area towards the bottom where it does seep, but it's a very easy cleanup. I have just a little swab that I use just to clean that up. Easy to do when the texture paste is still wet. If the texture paste is completely dried, there's not an easy way to clean it up. So if you notice there's a mistake or something, super easy to do while the texture paste is still wet. So I'm lifting my stencil up, trying to lift right up and not move it to possibly impact my stenciling there. Love that bright white on that alcohol ink background. I'm going to let that dry completely and wash my texture paste off of the stencil as well as the palette knife. Once this is completely dried, I'm going to find a frame and add it to the wall in my art room. But at this point, this is how it turned out and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the like button and the subscribe and notifications to get notified of more videos. Have a fabulous day.